Okay, welcome to the October 16th meeting of the Weare Board of Selectmen. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, just for your information, if I tend to be holding things way out there, it's because I brought my glasses in half a minute ago. First on our agenda tonight is a presentation from George, is it pronounced Lagos?
Yes, thank you.
Lagos, Executive Director at the New Hampshire Retirement System. So, George, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know you haven't had an opportunity to look at that folder that I've just handed out. First thing is, my name is George Lagos. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Retirement System. I'm a lifelong New Hampshire resident, born in Concord, now live in Bow. I've been with the retirement system for about 5 years, and I'm here as a part of a campaign that I'm on to improve our employer outreach. So we're out talking to towns, SAUs, various employer groups, just to make sure that we're communicating effectively so you folks all have a good idea of what's going on with the retirement system. Make sure you have the facts so that when town meeting comes and the budget questions come up that you're inevitably going to face, that you have the answers. And also, you can put a name with a face, and feel free to contact me at any point in time during any of those processes if you have any questions. So what I'm going to do is just quickly, in terms of the folder, just so you know what's in there, on the left side, there are these things that are identified in this agenda sheet as NYKs, now you knows. And those are just sort of shorthand, 1 or 2 page descriptions of various issues, retirement system issues that are important, but sometimes can be complex. So they're just, so it's meant to be plain reading, plain explanations of some things that are very important. And on the right side is other information with regard to resources we have, something you can look at your leisure, and if there's anything in there you want to talk about, you can just let me know, and I'm glad to fill in any blanks. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is go through what's on the back side of this agenda, which looks like this. We call it the dashboard. I'll give you basically a financial overview. Then I'm going to talk about employer rates, and then the decennial. And please just stop me as I go along with any questions you have, and I'll try not to talk too fast. And how much time would you like me to spend, by the way? Because I can spend 15 minutes or, the rest of the night. You tell me.
I think closer to the 15 minutes.
I'm happy to do that. We'll see how many questions we get as we go, okay? All right. So, on this page, we're just going to look at this for a minute. On the top, our assets. These numbers haven't been updated yet. You can see the last quarter, March 31 was the last number that's there. That's just under $8 billion. We're now at $8.2 billion with the retirement system. We had a very good year on the investments. And if you look down at the next row, you can see that as of, if you go over to the left where it says FYTD, that's fiscal year to date, as of the end of March, we were at 9.1%. What happened was the fiscal year ended as of June 30. We actually came in at 13.5%, which is a really good investment year for us. And, that's good news on a couple fronts. The thing I would emphasize is our assumed rate of return is 7.25%. So what that means is our target is 7.25%, and that's how we base all of our actuarial projections in terms of contribution rates. So if we do better than that, that's obviously a good thing, because that means there's more money in the kitty, and that should favorably impact how the rates are calculated. It's not the only factor, so there are a lot of other things that go into the mix, but it's a very important thing to happen. So coming in at 13.5% is very good. One thing we do also is we do what's called smoothing. So over a 5-year period, we take 20% of what happens that year and put that into the pot. And then when we get to year 6, we drop off the oldest year, which was already in 20% for 5 years, okay? And we add on the newest year. So basically what's happened now with adding this year on, this 13.5%, three out of the 5 years that we consider were all double-digit returns. So that's a good thing also in terms of rate contributions. We dropped off a year that was single digits, low single digits, and we added a 13.5. 20% of that goes into the pot, so that's a good thing. I'll say also that people are always wondering how we do. 13.5 sounds good. We all know the market was good this past year. That puts us in the top 18% of all public pension plans that are similar to ours. So not only is it a good number by itself, but it tells you that compared to other pension systems, about 150 of them that are similar to us, we're doing better than 80% of them in terms of how we're generating returns. So that's good news as well. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, on the funded ratio, this is an issue that's one of our biggest challenges. So we're funded at 60% of our liabilities. So that basically means we've got a pretty big financial hole there. And the size of that hole is about $5.1 billion, okay? That's called the UAAL. That's the unfunded actuarially accrued liability, which is why we call it UAAL, because it's a lot easier. That's a debt, basically, it's got to be paid. What that means is over a long period of time, the system was underfunded. And so it's a hole that's been dug. My simple analogy is, you dig a hole, you got 3 choices. You can, keep digging, you can stop digging, or you can fill it in. And in New Hampshire, we're filling that in. We're paying the unfunded liability. All the employers are paying the unfunded liability and the contribution rates. And it's going to take us 22 more years. It's a 30-year amortization period, or simplify it, call it a mortgage. It's not exactly like a mortgage, but it's the same idea. So it's like we borrowed all that money, and we're going to pay it back over 30 years. And right now we're about 8 years in. Because of the way it's amortized, it sort of goes like this. It stays sort of flat. And actually, the unfunded liability goes up a little bit. It's going to stay sort of flat, and then we're going to start seeing it get paid down. And doesn't really happen until we're about 15 to 20 years out before we start really making a dent in it. So the message I want to make sure you all know is we're going to have a 13.5% investment return. And the immediate thing is going to be, so the unfunded liability should improve because we made a lot more money than the 7.25. It's not the way it's going to work. Even though it was favorable, only 20% of that goes in because of the 5-year averaging, and because of all the other variables and the size of the debt, it's probably going to. I'm going to say probably. I'm going to be careful, but it's likely to have a marginal improvement, but it won't be big. That's 60%. I would say to you, for the next 5 years, we shouldn't really be straying far off of that 60% one way or the other. After we get beyond 5, we should start seeing it get better, a little bit better and better. It's very important for that message to be out there because people, I understand this. There's a tendency to be impatient. It's 60%. How come it's not getting any better? How come it's not getting any better? Because that's the way the amortization schedule works. It's not too dissimilar to a mortgage, How, if you can remember back, I can still remember this. I think most people can. When you first bought your first house and you paid your mortgage for 5 years, and it was a big chunk of your paycheck, and then you looked at the principal amount on the mortgage, and you still owed the same $60,000 that you borrowed in the first place. And how can that be? Well, that's the way amortization works. So that's where we are on that. Any questions on that? Okay. Contribution rates. I think this is usually the most important issue for folks in your seats. I just want to tell you, not that this makes a huge difference to you, but when I'm not sure how many years ago it was, but I was chairman of the Bow Budget Committee for 3 years in a prior life. So I have an understanding about town budgets and the impact this has in terms of what your opportunities are in terms of spending money and meeting expenses and the impact on the tax rate. So I understand how important this is, and the friction that can come up during town meeting and deliberations on this. I understand that process. So I just want to make sure I explain how this works from our standpoint. So contribution rates are set every 2 years. And right now, the contribution rates you have are what they're going to be for fiscal year 18 and for fiscal year 19. Okay, that's done. Okay, then we're going to, this next year, what they do is the actuaries look at our results every 2 years, and they say, okay, we assumed you were going to get a 7.25% rate of return, that the payroll was going to grow by 3.25%, and that people are going to live this long, and then about 30 other assumptions. And what they do is every 2 years they look at it and say, okay, here's what we did. How'd that compare to the assumptions? And if we did, when you add it all up, if we did better than the assumptions, then that means that it's probably going to have a favorable impact on the rates. And if we didn't do as well on the assumptions, that means the contribution rates are likely to go up. So the actuaries right now are looking at our results from the last fiscal year. They're going to provide us with an actuarial report probably toward the end of this year, most likely in the first quarter of next year. That'll go to our board. We'll look at it. The actuary will say, based on what we see here, the results say that we had a gain, which means we did better than the assumptions, or a loss, which means we didn't do as well. And based on that, they calculate what the proposed rates are going to be. The board looks at it, and the board then votes to adopt the rates in the fall, September, October, and those will be the rates that we'll have for 20 and 21 fiscal years. Okay, so that's coming up in the near future. Okay, any questions on any of that? One other exhibit I want to go through with you quickly.
I do have one question.
Sure.
If I understand it correctly. Over that 30-year period,
Yeah.
Pretty much, unless the market totally collapses, as long as you get a reasonable return on your investments, the rates to the employers and employees is adjusted in such a way that at the end of the 30 years, the unfunded liability should disappear.
Yeah, that's right.
So really, regardless of the ups and downs of the investments, because you adjust the rates so that it reflects that 30-year buy-up, so to speak.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's a very important point, because a lot of people, who don't understand that say, oh, the system's going to go bust. It's got, $5 billion is going down the tubes. My pension's not safe. It's not true. New Hampshire has a constitutional provision that says that the money in the pension system's got to be used to pay pensions. It says that the retirement system has to use actuarially sound basis for determining the rates. It says that employers have to pay the rates that are determined by the retirement system. So what that all means is the mechanism's in place so that it's got to be paid off in 30 years. Now, I'm gonna just give you two sort of footnotes to that, okay, that are important to know about. One is, one other thing that actually impacts the rates is an experience study. Every 5 years, we look at the assumptions overall, and if they're good, we leave them alone, and if we think they need to be changed, we change them. And if we change an assumption, and I'll give you an example of one we changed that had an impact. The investment return assumption before 2000, up to 2015, was 7.75%. And we get these investment advisors in who do this for a living, and they give us their projections, and they say over 5 to 7 years, investment returns should be in this bucket. Over 30 years, they should be in this range. And the board looks at all that, and they decide, do we keep the same assumption or do we change it? So they changed it from 7.75 down to 7.25. So what that does is, because this is all a present value calculation, the way that works is, when you reduce the rate of return assumption, it increases the liability. When you increase the liability, that has an impact on rates. So every 5 years, whatever happens in the actuarial study can have an impact on rates. Okay, so that's worth knowing. And because I took so long to explain that, I forgot the second point, and I'll come back to it as soon as it comes back into my head. Okay. In terms of contribution rates. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's the second one. I got it. This is a little bit esoteric, but one thing we're looking at. I'm going to talk about the Decennial Commission in a minute. It's basically a study of the entirety of the retirement system. There are 17 people serving on this commission. It's going on right now. One thing that's being looked at is this notion called layered amortization. So what that means is, if we adopted that, what that would mean is all the unfunded liability that's out there now would be paid by 2039, no matter what, based on the schedule we have in place, exactly as you said. No matter what happens, it's gonna get paid off because the rates will change up or down to take care of that. But also, every 2 years, as I said, we look at what's gone on and determine whether or not we did better or worse than the assumptions. And that means we have an actuarial gain or an actuarial loss. Right now, that gets lumped right into the same pond, the same pool, and all of it's going to be paid out in 2039. Layered amortization says, okay, every 2 years, if there's a new liability, we're going to amortize that out over another 15 or 20 years, for that 2-year period only, okay? 4 years later, we do the same thing with the next 2 years. So any changes that happen from this point forward would be amortized over a separate period of time. The concern is, well, that sounds like kicking the can down the road. And it's not really, because it's going to be, what happens is you'll pay it off, but on a 20-year cycle for that exposure itself as you go out into time. Why is it a good idea? Because it does two things for you. One is it gives you the ability to isolate what actually happened in terms of the development over the period of time that you're looking at. Right now, this UAL that we have in the 30-year amortization started back 8 years ago. Some of it was there when we started 8 years ago. Some of it came into being after that. And we really can't unravel it very well. It's like a bowl of spaghetti to figure out exactly where the liabilities came from. This allows you to have more transparency in terms of what happened and why. The other thing it does is, when you get out toward 2039, which is, let's say you're at 2035 and now you've got 4 years left. And let's say the market goes down the rat hole. Okay, let's say for 4 years we have miserable returns. Because you've got a fixed amortization period for all those liabilities, imagine what would happen is if your rate of return is at 7.25% and you make zero for 4 years. Now you're unfunded by a really substantial amount of money, and because all that liability is going to be paid within the 4-year period, when you get to that last 2 years in terms of employer rates, you could go right through the roof. So it manages the volatility, particularly as you get closer to the end of the amortization period. So all of that doesn't change much of what you said, but I just want you to be aware of it because it's a little bit different. So I don't mean to get too far into the weeds on that, but
So
you may be hearing about it.
So basically, if something like that happens, what you do is extend the mortgage, so to speak.
So I'd like to say it's more like taking out a home equity loan on top of your mortgage, because I don't like to say, whenever we talk about extending the mortgage, or it sounds like we're changing that 2039 target date and kicking the can down the road, which is something, I can tell you, my mission is to make sure we never kick the can down the road, because that's how the retirement system got into this fix in the first place. Somebody at the last legislative session put a bill in and said, why do we need to pay this off at 2039? Let's tack on 10 more years, go out to 2049. Well, okay, it gives you a little bit of savings in terms of your contribution maybe for the short term, but it adds $4 billion to the unfunded liability over time. That's not a good decision. The legislature thankfully said, no, we're not doing that. So that didn't get very far. But one of the mayors was looking for a way to get rate relief and came up with that idea. Came up with two other ideas. Said, why do we need to be funded at 100%? Let's try to get funded just to 80%. And again, because you're shrinking the liability, you're shrinking, your contributions are going to go down. But that's artificial as well. So, we do our best to make sure the legislature understands these are not good ideas, because that kicking the can down the road thing is how we got into this fix in the first place. Okay? So the one thing I wanted, just in terms of translating this into contributions, on the left side of that folder, one of these Now You Knows says 5 facts on employer contributions. And I would tell you, I shouldn't tell you, I'm going to suggest to you, as a select person, this is probably the most important thing for you to read in the folder, because this is sort of the high-level overview of how the contribution rates work and what the issues are. Okay? You all got that? Okay? So one, I just told you they're determined every 2 years. 18, 19, the unfunded liability went up because we adjusted the assumed rate of return, which is, I think I've just described that to you. 3, the Board of Trustees has no discretion in setting employer rates. I just want to mention one other thing to you that sometimes people get confused about. The retirement system, the state of New Hampshire is the plan sponsor. What's that mean? It means they make the rules. Okay, they develop the pension plan. They decide what the benefit's going to be, how many years of service you need, when you can retire, how we're going to calculate your benefit. All those things are in the plan document, which is in the statute, which is 100A. They do that. The Board of Trustees in the retirement system, we don't make any policy decisions. We're the administrator. So this isn't an effort to tell you, hey, it's not our job, but it's to make sure you understand that we don't make those decisions, the legislature does. What we do is we make sure the legislature understands the facts, and if it's something that could impair the pension system or is contrary to the interests of the members and the beneficiaries from the standpoint of securing their pensions, then we make sure they understand what they're doing and they have the proper information, because we don't want any bad decisions to be made. But those are the roles of the legislature in the retirement system. So in the law, the Constitution, Article 36A says we're responsible for setting the employer rates using sound, basic actuarial methodology. So we don't have any discretion to say, well, let's not bump them up that much this time around for any reason. If the actuary says it's X, it's going to be X unless there's a good reason. You know, we can say, did you go back and look at this? Are you sure about this? We can work with them on that. But if the actuaries come out with a number and say it's X, it's going to be X, because we have a legal obligation to do that. Okay, so for the three components, the normal cost, the UAL, and the medical subsidy. So on the back, those are the three components of the rates. And I'm just going to walk through this exhibit at the top of the back side of that page. There's a chart. And if I can just walk through that briefly, I'm at the end of the trail pretty much on the 15 minutes, okay? Everybody's still awake, yeah? Well, all right. So let's look at the second line. It says employee, political sub. So this would be, the example here would be your town employees. Okay, they'd fall into this bucket. So if you look at the first column, next to the employee political sub, you see 2.16%, the pension normal cost. That's the amount of the, this is, by the way, this is all just the employer contribution we're talking about. The employees pay their own, they pay 7% in. That's outside of this. They pay that anyway. So 2.16% of the cost of what you're paying toward each employee goes toward their benefit. The normal cost means what's the cost of their pension benefit. Okay, so it's really a very small part. You can see on the far out, 11.38% is the contribution rate now that you pay for employees. So 2.16 of that goes to paying for their benefit. Beside that, you see the 8.92. That's the UAL. That's paying the prior mortgage, the prior debt. Okay, that's the unfunded liability. So you can see that 80.5% of your pension cost for your employees is going to pay this unfunded liability that was created, when the bills weren't paid on time. And that's just a shame that that's where we are, but that is where we are. And then you can see that 80.5% is that grayed area there that shows you that percentage. And then to the right of that, you see this medical subsidy, 0.30%. Some employees are entitled to a medical subsidy, which is an offset toward the cost of their medical insurance. It's a closed group. It's not available to most people anymore. There are some group 2, police and fire folks who are eligible, and when they retire, they'll get it, but it's going to be a declining and decreasing amount over time. So when you add all that up, you get to the 11.38% you're paying for your town employees, and you can see that the vast majority of it is going to the unfunded liability. Now, fast forwarding, if we did not get involved with layered amortization and we just stuck with the current amortization schedule, at 2039 what would happen is it would all be paid up, and the next year, assuming that everything else was in line with the assumptions, your contribution rate would go from 11.38 down to something in the vicinity of 2.16. I can't predict what it's actually going to be out that far, but representatives, ballpark, if today was 2039 and these were the numbers, what you'd be left with is 2.07 plus 2.07, am I in the right line? No, I'm sorry, 2.16 and 0.30, 2.46 would be your contribution as compared to 11.38, because that's the actual cost of the benefit and the medical subsidy. If we do layered, what's going to happen is your contribution rates will probably come down a little bit, and it won't go down. It'll go down over time, but not quite as dramatically, because some of the future liability is going to be pushed out into the future. But you'll avoid that potential for huge volatility at the end of the 2039 phase. So that's something that's not in law. No decision's been made, but that's on the table. So I'm just making you aware of it. But the bottom line is the unfunded, and by the way, one thing that happens with the unfunded liability, there are some legislators who have the view, this happened every year since I've been there. They said, we can't afford this. We need to change the plan to a defined contribution plan, or whatever it is, cash balance plan, or some other plan, and get out from under this. Well, I'm sorry to say, that doesn't get you out from under the unfunded liability. That would be like living in a house where you got the 30-year mortgage and say, I'm getting away from this mortgage, I'm buying another house. Well, okay, now you got two mortgages, right? Because it didn't go away. Until you pay the bank off. I mean, I know some people think dropping the keys is the way to go and walk away. You can't do that here, okay? That unfunded liability is still there, no matter what you do going forward. It's a debt's got to be paid, and it's a money hole, and it's got to be filled with money. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. And I just want to emphasize that, because some people have in their mind that there's a solution, there's an easy solution. And believe me, if there was an easy solution, I've been looking at this for 5 years, I wouldn't be futzing around like I am over this issue if there was a simple solution. The simple solution is to pay the bill, and it's going to take time, and it's a difficult issue, and unfortunately, it's driven all the employers' costs way up from what they ought to be if we were fully funded and paying the bills as they came due over time. The last thing I just want to say to you is, I'm sorry, the decennial is going to take me 2 minutes, but the majority of this unfunded liability came about because way back in the 1990s, they decided that employer costs, they looked at the pension system and they said, they had an actuary come in and look at it, and they said, wait a minute, the liabilities have gone through the roof. People are living a lot longer. They hadn't done a study for a long time. They said, employer contribution rates are going to jump. We can't do this. We got to do something else. And they said, what can we do? And they came and talked to the retirement system. They said, well, what's the methodology you're using? And we're using entry age normal is what we're using. They said, well, and the actuary said, that's what you ought to use. And they said, well, what else is there? And there's this thing called open group aggregate, which the actuary said, I don't really like it, but that would be another thing you could do. You could do it over a short period of time, but I wouldn't recommend it. And what the legislature said, yeah, we'll go with door number 2. Okay? And so for 17 years, okay, what happened was we basically didn't keep score properly. They went along happily thinking that they're funded okay, it's not doing badly. And my analogy is like your football game, you think you're winning 21-14 at the half, and you come out after halftime and look at the scoreboard, and now you're down 50-21. So what the heck happened? Well, they weren't keeping score properly, and they figured that out in 2007 and said, we got to do something. And that's when they changed the methodology back to entry age normal, and they said, we got to finance this over 30 years and pay it off. So, to their credit, they took hold of it and dealt with it, and that's where you are now. But that was where the majority of the unfunded liability came from. Some other things too, but I don't need to go in the weeds unless you want me to. Okay. Last thing is this decennial commission. So 10 years ago, 2007, when they came up with these answers, they actually did it just before this decennial. They said, we ought to look at this whole thing so we don't get into the same problem again. So they had a commission created, and they looked at everything about the retirement system. Gave it a full physical, so to speak. Looked at every aspect of it. Came up with a lot of recommendations. A lot of those got turned into law. A lot of them were really good ideas. Some of them they didn't do. A lot of them they did. And then one thing they did when they did that, it says, in 10 years from now, we ought to do this again, just to make sure we're on the right path. So that started July 1. It was supposed to start. It didn't actually start till the end of August. They've got until December 1, and right now they're doing the same thing. They're looking at the whole thing. They're giving us the full physical, looking at everything. One of the things is, why has the unfunded liability gone up from back then? And that has to do with the adjustment in the assumptions and a couple of years where investment returns weren't there. But they're looking at the whole thing, and they're gonna come up with legislation and propose it. And that's something that's on the table to be done every 10 years, is to make sure, things don't go off into the ditch again, which I think is a really good idea. And it meets every Thursday, and I would say to you, if you have trouble sleeping at night and you wanna read up on it, on the state website, they have a link that's got every document that's been, we've done about 4 presentations there. There's all kinds of information on everything there. But really, if you're interested in it, there's a lot of information there. They're supposed to come up with their report. December 1's their cutoff date, and they're supposed to come up with their report on December 1. They may or may not make that date, but that's when they're supposed to do it. So that's likely to, there'll be some news associated with that. We'll see how that comes out. So I'm not sure how close it came to 15, but that's covered everything that I want to share with you. But I'm happy to talk about anything else. As you see, there's a lot more in the folder, but if you have any more questions, I'm happy to take it.
Are the employee rates adjusted every 2 years as well?
All the rates are. There are 4 groups: police, fire, teachers, and employees. And employees are split in state and municipal, but we look at them all. Everything is done every 2 years.
Questions, anyone? Jack? No, sir?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would just say to you, please, when you get into the budget cycle, which I imagine you're about there now, if there's anything that I can be helpful with or a question comes up that I can help in any way, please don't hesitate to call me. And I mean that. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Okay, next on our agenda is discussion of removal of stone wall for timber trust. And we have Don Hardwick here to discuss that.
So, we talked to the planning board last week about removing the stone wall in 2 sections to do a timber harvest out on the Fair and Pond Town Forest. And we talked to them about potentially moving the landing area, and we still got to look at that option with them, I guess. But I guess we're going to try to go ahead and get approval for removing the stone walls if we have to go that route. So I took some pictures of the existing walls that I can leave with you guys, or I emailed them to Chip too, so he has them.
Yeah.
So I have all that.
I think it'd be good to see it. Just for the board's information, this is the motion that was made. It's a little different here than normally somebody comes in, they want to open up a 30-foot section of the wall, put in a driveway, and it's no problem. Just put the rocks someplace where they're pretty, and we'll be all set. But this is a little different because of the impact on some stone culverts and things as well. So this was the motion that was made. Mr. Kirk moved, seconded by Mr. Fillmore, that the board recommend the selectmen approve the request, but requested that the selectmen look at other log landing locations to avoid removing so much wall and traversing 2 stone culverts with heavy equipment. Now, I don't think anybody other than myself was on the board at the time, but PSNH did a lot of work out in that area I don't know, 6-7 years ago, maybe longer than that, putting in new towers and so forth. And when they did, they, in some ways, improved the road to the point where there was getting traffic that we really didn't want. So we had to go back and put in mud holes and so forth. But one of the things also is that there was a stone culvert there that was not totally destroyed, but it was crushed so that it wasn't functioning. And so the town, or PSNH, I'm not sure which, paid to have that rebuilt, and a local stonemason.
I was out there today.
You were?
Yeah. That's a nice little bridge they got there now.
Yep. And the culvert
That's
that's,
wide enough for your truck?
Yep.
the culvert that was up on, just before you get to that hunting camp, I think it is. There's a stone culvert, either just before or just after. And And that's the one that was rebuilt because it was damaged by PSNH. And then I am not familiar with the one on Jewett Road, but you said there's another stone culvert there.
Yeah, got a Benji out there. I took pictures of that one that they rebuilt, and I don't think it'll be an issue for us after looking at it. They must have got it too far off to the side or something and knocked, it looked like they knocked the upper header in. So I don't think that one will be an issue at all after looking at that one. And then the one on Jewett Road, it's got a lot of cover over it. It's just kind of narrow. The roadway's narrow right there. Yeah.
The other thing we discussed at the planning board was some type of bonding so that if they are damaged, the company would pay for it.
Yeah, and I checked, we do have a bond in with the town on the project right now, so that should cover anything, I would think.
All right.
And I don't think that one on Jewett Road will give us any trouble if we drive the equipment through the woods. The concern with that was the width. And I think Henniker Stone was hauling out there with dump trucks, and there's a lot more weight on the axles on a dump truck than on a logging truck, so.
Do you have any protection you put down on those stone culverts? Or you
We've
just-
put stone plates down in the past, but I don't think those won't require anything like that, I don't think. There's plenty of cover over them. I think the main thing was the width on the roadway there.
And that's
yeah.
not an issue on?
On Mountain Road, it's not an issue. It's plenty narrow enough. And then on Jewett Road, it's not an issue for our trucks, but the logging equipment's pretty wide. But if we drive the equipment through the woods, which the forester said we could do, we wouldn't be driving it across the stone culvert. The equipment wouldn't be, just the logging trucks would be. So that would keep the width down to the same width as the dump trucks that were hauling out there. Yeah.
And you have other concerns, it seemed that at the planning board, you had other concerns about not wanting two landing sites.
Yeah, well, it's more economically feasible for us to have one site and pull the wood to one area, and then it does less disturbance and bothers less neighbors. There's not many people out Jewett Road, but yeah. Yeah, so I think we're gonna talk to the forester here again this week and get with the Conservation Commission and hopefully look at the different options and come up with a different plan, but if not, we might need to go this route.
So if we approve the removal of the rocks, that won't necessarily be the end of it, because if you find that another landing site
Yeah, if
is
it-
approved,
Yes.
then this is null and void, because you don't have to move any stone.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. But we would like to get it approved in case they're not willing to do that route. Maybe they have some concerns I didn't see or haven't seen yet, so.
How much of an area, Donnie,
Um,
stone wall you gonna be?
right now, there's like a 100-foot section that we'd probably end up having to take out on Mountain Road.
Yeah.
So that's pretty wide area on Mountain Road.
It's that
yeah.
landing then.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, just because it gets steep pretty quick. And I talked to the forester too about maybe putting the landing up off the road a little more, and that would keep the stone wall entrance down to like 30 feet instead of 100. But we haven't looked at it yet, so I don't know if that's an option or not.
Now, there was some question here the other night about whether that was really a scenic stone wall or whether it was just pile rock.
Yeah, you want the pictures, Ian?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the stone culvert header on Mountain Road.
One time.
One at a time.
Here's the stone wall on Mountain Road here. So
This
as
is
you-
the stone wall.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's kind of falling down now in spots that are a little better than others.
Is there any chance, Donnie, after you get done logging, you could line the rock kind of?
Yeah, that was what we talked about with planning board, putting the rocks back, building the wall back. and all that, so, yeah.
Sure.
So you guys can keep those copies of it more.
I mean, it's a little more.
I mean, what?
I adjusted it. They're not pink or anything.
No, I want the
Probably
pink ones, you
somebody
want the brown
trashed
ones,
them
you're
all
all
down.
set.
Right, that's put it there.
Benji, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, I don't know, the last time we proposed to log on a class 6 road, I needed to okay the upgrade of the road. I don't know if that's a case of this one or not. I don't have a problem with them using where they're proposing. I think that it's a lot of extra work for the logger, a lot of stone wall to be removed for nothing. If he can convince the Conservation Commission to use one landing, I think it's better for everybody. There's a little brook that you could put a skid bridge across and cross, and it's all no problem. But there's some concerns, I guess, the conservation. Probably have to put some gravel and stuff on the road, which, that's the only time Class 6 roads get any maintenance, because it's illegal for us to put any money into them. And it's kind of nice to have them travelable in case, passable in case there's an emergency out there, for fire or something like that. That's a long ways out there, you went out there. I wouldn't.
Yeah, that must be
truck
public service
down
for them.
there, a much better spot,
Yeah.
but I don't have a problem with removing that, I mean, no reason.
We had a couple of really sharp corners to bring.
Yeah, we'll have to widen out that one corner after the
After the,
bridge here. I think, I don't know if I printed a picture, I ran out of ink, but I sent Chip a picture, so.
there's almost a right turn near the beaver pond there.
Yeah, that one, that's where I was talking about at the planning board meeting, we'd have to push that wall back under the power lines to make that corner so we're not getting the trucks out in the beaver pond. Hard.
The guide wires come right out.
Yeah, we'll have to set the road over a little bit there.
Move a couple of utilities.
Yeah, get a little closer to them. Yeah, because you gotta get
Yeah,
up.
doesn't look like one of those culverts on Mountain Road there, where your truck's in the picture. That
Yeah.
looks plenty big enough.
Oh, yeah, that's the one that they, PSNH.
The other one looks like they just laid phone poles alongside of it to keep from going over the edge. But
That's
that looks like that'd be, you know, you can get a, the
Yeah.
reason you can't get a truck.
Yeah, that one on Mountain Road we
Oh.
shouldn't have any trouble with that at all. That's the one that they just.
You could probably get the skidder up through there.
Yeah.
It's wide enough for that, but
Yeah.
the other one doesn't look wide enough, you'd be up on the wall.
No, it's pretty narrow. Yeah, I think we measured it like 12 feet,
Yeah,
pole to pole.
yeah. Yeah, you can get a truck through there, all right, but
Yeah,
not the equipment.
yeah, our skidders are 12, just over 12 feet, so. But if we drive them through the woods, it wouldn't be an issue.
Get narrow
But then
tires.
we'd be crossing that brook anyway.
That's right, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Those big logs in it, drive over.
Yeah, well, we got the portable skidder
Yeah.
bridges that we use for the brooks like
Get
that.
Right.
We do it every day, but maybe they're
the
not
maps.
used to it.
Well, I'll make a motion, if it's okay with everybody to go something like this. I move that we approve the removal of the stone wall to allow entrance to 2 landing sites for the logging operation on town land, off Mountain Road and Jewett Road. Providing that the Conservation Commission is still not going to approve a single landing site.
Second.
Any other questions or discussion?
Do you know how much the bond is?
I didn't look, I can't remember what it was. It's usually for $1,000 bond we put up with the town.
Yeah, it's a 1,000, I know it's a percentage of whatever it covers, or usually it's
Yeah.
1,000 for $1 million. Usually it covers up to $1 million liability. Or 100,000, depending on which way you
I'm
look at
really
it.
not concerned with those culverts after what trucking over and stuff would be fine.
And nothing is gonna do anything to the road that's just been put in for the
No.
Mountain
The
Road?
Class
Mountain
6
Road,
road.
is it Mountain?
Oh, no, where he's doing the, where you're talking about where he's done the improvement?
Yes.
Artie's.
Yeah, not really nothing to do about that. I was hoping to have that done. He actually waited 3 weeks, 4 weeks for me, and I don't know when they're ever coming. The only saving grace is that this will be the base coat, so we'll put 1 more inch of top coat on it next year, so.
And he's really not making any.
Harsh turns.
On
No,
maintenance,
it's just
kind of
dry.
It's
Up and down the
beyond.
hill. Yeah.
It's beyond the repair, right?
And I know that in the past, they've made a bond to town roads, but I've learned you can't make one person bond a road. Everybody that uses the road in a big vehicle, you have to make them bond, and there's gravel trucks going up there and everything else, so.
Now,
Then
is
you
there-
would be playing this of who did it, so just, I'm not worried about it. I wished it would've, wished my paving job had worked out different, but, be good compaction, that's for sure. So, but we're topping it next year, I'm not really worried about it. So.
Okay, why don't we finish this motion, and I have a question because it doesn't relate. Any other questions about the removal of the rocks? Okay, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, you're all set. set on
All
that.
right,
Just,
thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Tony.
Concerning the paved road,
Yes.
if there's a possibility that there, I guess you'd call them sags because of the weight load, would you be able to, in the second year coat, shim that? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe it's not even
The
something
top
that's
coat
gonna-
would take that out, but
it would.
if there was a sag, it'd have something to do with the base, and that road's hard.
I guess it is.
I went up there today, again, I drove out there again today, so, I'm not concerned about, the biggest thing is gonna be a 22-foot road, as crooked as Mountain Road is, when two vehicles meet one another, you might get off an inside corner a little, but. What you do about it?
We've been in touch with Benji, and whenever he schedules it, we're gonna try to stay off the road for a day or two, so he has time to set up too. So let us know when they're gonna be out there.
Okay, I guess we're all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Well, I just wanted to give a 30-second update of what we've been doing, and I sent the solid waste hauling out to bid again for starting January of 2018. I don't know what you want to do first. We can do that, I guess. I put it out early so that we can get it in the budget. Have numbers. I sent it out and put it in the paper, as the rules say, that's the paper on the backside. And we only got one interested contractor, so.
Thank you.
Which would be Sizemore, who we are currently using. I don't know what, you might have any questions about it, the numbers are all there. It's increased a little bit, which would be expected, I guess, nothing ever goes down. He's been terrific to work with. Someday in the future, I'd like to look towards getting a used truck for ourselves, but right now it isn't in the cards, so I put this out for 3 years, and this will be a 3-year contract with a,
You have that 3% per year rider in his present contract?
yes, he does. Yeah.
Where are the increases?
What's that?
You said there were increases from,
Well, it's more than what we're paying this year, but it goes up every year, so, yeah.
Fuel and
I guess I can't really say it's more money than what we're paying this year, but it isn't really increases, because that's what his bid is, I guess, so.
So would the total, I don't know if you've calculated it this way or not, would the new bid be in that 3% range, do you think, over what you had been charging, or more than that?
No, it's quite a bit more.
But it-
Trash hauling's 18% more. The C and D's 5%, almost 6%. The metal's quite a bit. It's 22%, but I think that has a lot to do with roll-offs. There isn't anybody that really particularly likes them. As a matter of fact, if we ever do our own, we'll either use the scrapyard's roll-off containers or buy a trailer, because you have to have a different, he has a trailer, so you have to have a different truck or a different trailer to haul a roll-off. You can't just back in and pin in with a tractor. I'm assuming that's the reason. The paper didn't go up much, 5%. The hourly rate, I believe, is the exact same. Fuel surcharge is the exact same.
Any questions or comments?
Looking for a motion?
Sure.
A lot of people around that do this.
No.
That's the thing.
He's Johnny on the spot, I guess that's what we like. He's got enough trucks that if one blows up, it doesn't matter to us.
Mhm.
He's got another one, so.
And the services, when you call
Service
him,
is
he's there.
second to none, and they let us know when there's something wrong with the trailer, more specific than that there's something wrong with the trailer, you know, and they'll tell you the right brake on the middle axle's hanging, you know, it's kinda handy when you got somebody that good. Not that it necessarily matters to everybody, but it does us. So he's been great to work with, and, you know. I don't know who does it, you know, I just put it in the paper and posted it legally. Didn't go soliciting bids because I don't even know who does it besides him, and I didn't want to be accused of doing it for one person, so.
Right.
I don't know who does this.
I don't know if anybody else. I mean,
No, Martin does it?
I don't know.
no, I don't think he hauls.
I got
them.
roll-off.
I don't think he hauls solid waste.
I got tractor.
Yeah.
He does roll off, I don't think he does solid
A
waste.
lot of
Yeah.
people don't go out of state, and our paper goes to Massachusetts.
Right.
So Rick, you wanna-
Yeah, I move to approve, to award the bid to Sizemore Truck, for the hauling services for the transfer station as a whole for the, time period of 3 years, beginning January 1/18 to December 31st, 2020.
Second.
any more questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alrighty, so we've been getting quite a bit done at the highway and transfer. We've had hazardous waste day, they had a good turnout for that. Mountain Road is finished for us, waiting on paving. I did meet with the contractor, they're just swamped like everybody else. It's the base, so I'm not really concerned about it, other than the phone calls. I'm not concerned about the quality of work that's gonna come out of paving leak. Just get sick of my phone ringing. We did Colby Road last Sunday. I would like to thank a few people for that. First of all, the highway department. All but one guy came, and he had a previous endeavor that had been planned for that day for months, so otherwise he'd have been there. They all came, didn't complain. Most of them traded it for a day, not all of them. He didn't pay too much overtime. Yep, me for nothing for the day. We,
I was wondering where all the trucks are going. I'm sitting at the Legion going, seeing trucks loaded. I'm like, this is Sunday, right?
For a weekend, but we didn't know exactly which weekend, and it kind of fell into that one. So the weather looked good, and it was until it came time to pick the pipe off the trailer. But, you know, when the work, most people I don't think realized that the pavement wasn't there because there was nothing under it. I think they just thought we had a pothole to patch. There was nothing under those steel plates. There was, we packed dirt in there, but without the steel plates, every time a truck tire or bus tire hit that spot, the dirt would fall down in. I wished I'd have brought my town phone, I didn't, but I'm gonna get some pictures printed off for you guys, see where the separation in the culvert was. And then every time a truck would hit it, the dirt would fall in that joint, so. The first time it happened, Mount William loaned me 2 or 3 plates. It happened and got bigger, and the plates weren't long enough, so I left them there. John Neville from Goffstown loaned me 2 more longer plates. We just put over Mount William's plates. So those were the plates that had been getting drove over all summer. So I'd like to thank those people. Scott Silva from Cold Springs let me stockpile material, and I call this pit, it's not a pit, where he's building his garage down there on Colby Road. He let us use his loader, he let us use his 330 excavator, all for free, so I'd like to thank him. John Neville, Mike Tebow from T-Quip let me use a stone box for free. That's to dig out of with an excavator, because that 330 was so enormous that it would never, the bucket wouldn't fit in my 6-wheelers, and I was afraid of popping the tailgate on my 10-wheelers, so we put the material in the stone box, and then you dig it. It's just a big steel bathtub's all it is, but you can't hurt it. So, all those people let me loan that stuff for nothing. It was a big cost savings.
Yes.
I'm sure I don't know if I'll get a bill or not. I would expect one, but Paul Sizemore hauled that pipe down when I called him when I was ready. I didn't have room to have it down there early. It was too big. So I called an hour ahead of time, said I'm going to be ready in an hour. He backed in with it just the minute I was finished the bottom. I mean, it couldn't have went any better than it did. Could have not rained, but took us, my sign crew, from the time they set up, tore down, was about 12 hours. We had the road shut down, dug out, put back together, and reopened. We did spend a couple days cleaning up, tidying up, hauling the old pipe off, putting guardrails back in, things like that. So, we've got a mowing tractor rented. We're doing that right now.
Yeah, on that, is one of your guys running it, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's doing a good job.
No,
I've seen more stuff bent over and half cut. than
well,
I've
that
seen
mower don't do a good job, and I'm
Yeah,
not
the
happy
mower's not
about it. The mower isn't, but and I always get the names of them mixed up. And ones we always got rotary blades.
Right.
Well, I always asked for them, and they always broke down or already out, and they didn't have any. This is one of a lot of people think they're better. It's the flail type. And they ain't worth it.
They ain't better.
They aren't that good if the brush, because the brush is gone. It's overgrown. It's going to be a mess for a couple of years.
Yeah.
There was very poor management on the brush, and because a lot of phone calls come with brush cutting. And some people don't like phone calls. I don't either, but we got to get it cut back. Then next year, when it's this tall, we can mow it right over. But it's just 5, 6, 7, 8 years of it growing up.
Out further this year.
Yeah, I told them to go as far as it takes to give sight distance.
Yeah.
It does look not that good, but when you tackle an elm tree that big around, that's a lot to ask for a little brush on.
It is.
Isn't. The salesman even come, he said, you ain't supposed to be mowing that type of stuff, that tractor. I said, we'll bring me a different tractor then. That's what I have. So, it'll turn gray and go away when the snow comes, but it could look better, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's the mower.
Okay.
Okay, because I was told about it too.
I knew it was one of the two.
But if you did it every year, it would be all right. But 1 month isn't enough either, and that's all the money. It's
Oh, no.
$10,000 for the tractor and $300 to get it delivered. So for a month, 4 weeks.
Back to Mountain Road for a
Yes.
minute. You have any concern about just the time of year getting to a point where they won't be able to put paving down, or?
No.
I don't know how late.
No, as long as it isn't froze solid, because it's a base, so it's not adhering to anything. It's just setting on top of the gravel. When you put the top on, you want the top to stick to the other pavement, and you want the two to stick together. Then you want warmer weather. When you put base down, you're just putting one hard surface on top of another. It's not glued to the dirt, so it doesn't really matter, other than it's been nice to get the shoulders on. It stinks to do shoulders when the fall leaves are there, it all balls up, it's a wreck, but I didn't have it ready in August when they wanted to pave, and it's just, everybody's busy, it's just how it is. It's that time of year. A lot of towns spent their extra money, so.
They give you a projection of when they think they'll be,
Or the end of the month, but that's coming. We went around Tuesday or Wednesday and measured all the handwork. We've done a lot of other culverts in town. We've replaced Chuck Street culvert. That had failed, just like Kobe Road. It just more minor, so the news attention wasn't so big. We installed one on Francistown Road to relieve a water problem. We're going to put under drain on Toby Hill this week. Try to patch that hill because the water bleeds out of it so bad you can't even get up it with a plow truck. So, and various other little spots we're gonna have the hand crew come do. And we're making winter sand when we have time. Trying to get trucks ready for winter.
Hopefully get a little leeway there.
I hope so.
Okay.
Oh, and my other truck's supposed to go in for paint this week, so that's exciting. And it'll be there a week, so I should have it in a couple of weeks.
Nice.
All right,
Thanks, Mitch.
thanks, Benji.
thanks.
Next we have audited bids.
One of the auditing bid.
I emailed you guys the the breakdown that Beth had done in regards to all these books that you got.
Does anyone need a copy?
I don't know if you guys printed one.
I didn't print one out. Thanks.
I'll take one if you're going.
Alright.
Thank you.
Okay, well, these are the 4 auditors that replied to the proposal. I went through them and just wrote down what each one is offering us, cost, the number of hours that they're designated to us, how many clients, because I thought that would be really important, is the staff of these firms and what their client count is, because if you want, if they have a lot of clients and a short number of staff, then they're not going to be able to help us and give us a lot of attention. We might be a small town, but we have over 17 funds, and a lot of those funds have, one fund has over 20 accounts in it, so very time consuming when it comes to reconciling and the audit process. Are there any questions from the?
Do you have a recommendation? I mean, as I looked through it, it looked to me like the second one in the second column would be, without mentioning your company name.
Yeah. I've worked with all of them except for the one in the third column. And no, I don't have a preference. They're all very qualified firms.
Yeah, that one in the second column has a huge client list as far as other towns.
Yeah, but they have a huge staff.
Yeah, you look at the bottom, you see the
Yeah.
ratio, it's small, I like
Yep.
that.
I didn't mean that as a negative.
Oh, okay.
I meant,
All right.
Right,
Yes, they're very well known,
they're very well.
and a lot of people, yes, trust them.
Towns of all sizes and cities and so forth.
right.
Mhm. And that was just the governmental entities. They do some others. So under staff size under them, I wrote for governmental, because they do have larger staff, but only 6 are for governmental.
You did call some of the references to it, Beth.
Yeah, I called all of them except for the first column. Obviously, that is our current auditor. Yes, and all the people that I spoke to, all the references, speak highly of everyone that they've had. The one I spoke to that has the 4th column auditing firm, they've had them since 2011. Couldn't say enough nice things about them. And I spoke to 2 other people in the 2nd and 3rd column in the same thing. Nothing bad to say about any of them. They all take the time, listen to them, come in, spend as much time as they need in-house, available by phone within 24 hours, we'll return calls.
You said you did check references on the third column as well?
Yes, yeah, and I was really surprised on that one because number one, the cost caught my eye. It was the lowest by far, and then the number of staff. But, no, great things about them. The references, I called for 2 towns on that one just to make sure I got good references. And both of them said, no, they gave us full attention, 5 staff would come in. By the end of the week, there would only be 2 or 3. They did a great job. Returned calls within 24 hours.
What were the size of the towns? You can probably mention the towns.
Okay, that one would be Hopkinton and Bow.
Oh, wow.
The one on the end was New Boston, and the second column was Bristol
So,
and Francistown.
so the reference on the third column, you got the reference from what town?
2, Bow and Hopkinton.
Well,
Yep, so I tried to break it out because they were very similar. I mean, if you take away the cost and look, the number of hours they were willing to give us, and then I broke it down to what would actually be per hour to see, find some difference in them, but.
Well, the per hour cost is not like an add-on, that's breaking it out.
No, that's breaking down the contract,
Yeah,
yep.
okay.
But they all mentioned how many hours they were willing to give us, so then I thought, one said 167, one said 150. So then I broke it down per hour to see what that would be.
Yeah, Melanson and he, oops,
Yeah,
am I supposed to not say the name?
I don't know if it makes a difference. was avoiding it.
It's
but-
not, it's not a negative anyway.
Yeah, okay. None of them
But they
are.
didn't answer the question on whether there would be additional costs for research. They just said no charge for phone calls.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't ask, I went through my proposal to see if I asked them
Okay.
if they'd be available.
The others just
Yeah.
added it?
Yep.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure they all answered everything in the proposal that was required of them, and I looked through it and I didn't ask that question.
You know, they, again, looking at that third column and the two towns that you mentioned, have they worked with them multiple years or just a 1 year thing?
Multiple, I want to say, oh, theirs didn't list it all out.
Hmm.
2010 to 2016, and the other one was 2010 to 2016, so it's current, because we're all going out for our 17 audits now, so.
That's some big numbers.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
That's some big numbers. Yeah. Another one.
Any questions of that?
Concord. I like that.
What's the thoughts from board members on?
I like the second column myself,
Myself, I do too.
Yeah, I agree.
after reading all the information that we had handed to us.
Yes, and the notes. Yeah.
Even with the references to the
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, there's 2 pages of
it would be a
Serve
toss
people.
up between 2 or 3, but second proposal. Second one listed here is give us the best service all along.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it sounds like we've got 3 board members at least, so, you know, why doesn't somebody make a motion and we'll go with that?
I'll make a motion to award the auditing contract for 2017, 18, and 19 to Melanson Heath at the cost of $15,000 per year.
Second?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Five.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
All right, let's see, what are we going for? Camera one, camera bids, I think I sent you that
Shit.
spreadsheet as well.
Did that come from Sean or Emily?
This came from Sean.
Okay.
Emily asked the question, Sean put it in a format.
Okay, good.
So what, he thought it'd be easier because the top of the questions that were asked, and then underneath is, what I forwarded to you, it all came from Sean.
Yeah, and,
I liked that, the questionnaire. That was good.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And going over it, I also had some input from a citizen as well, but I don't know how much conversation we'll have about it, Tom. I think we had it narrowed down to 2 last week, honestly.
I looked at the second one listed there, the price, and they are doing the NVR. the-
Yeah.
Correct, correct.
So they can, all you gotta do is tune up, I guess, a channel, so to speak, in the
Right.
web browser. And,
Yeah, so I mean, you're not, they can go and do it remotely.
remotely.
And plus, it's not gonna cost anything to have.
Travel time
Or cost anything to have Goffstown to have live feed. With that
Right.
camera, they can do it right on their
Yep.
desktop.
Right.
Which
Yep.
they can't, unless you do a whole separate feed like it's with the
Yeah.
Section 1.
And for the price difference, I don't think there's a lot. I mean, that reoccurring plan, the maintenance plan, that's going to get eaten up real quick.
Right.
And that's an ongoing cost for as long as we want, so.
And they are only
6
30.
months,
It's,
it's gone.
it's gone, yeah. And for the little we'll save now, and to me, again, it's not apples to apples. You know, it's apples to oranges, I feel.
And
Yeah.
they're fairly close by for service.
Yeah, it seemed to, yeah.
Right.
And it even states right there that, that there's a 5-year warranty right there,
And they
so.
provide additional 1-year warranty on their parts and labor.
Right, not 90 days.
And, there's no charge for calling our technician and receiving help over the phone.
Or they can access the
Or
system,
they can access the system and do some of it right that way, so.
probably, right?
And they're saying, the driving time's about 30 minutes if they had to get here.
And that's not terrible.
No.
Are you looking for a motion?
I am, have we determined that this is going to be out of the police budget?
Well, that's,
Yeah.
you have that or government buildings. You have two choices.
No, I think myself, I've been on the assumption all along that it's gonna come out of the budget, not that fund.
Yeah, I think that's the direction we were going in.
Yeah,
Correct.
That's what I understood.
Right. I just don't know what it's called bottom line.
We'll have to have the chief look at the line.
Yeah, I'll just say it'll be bottom line, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things, doesn't have anything to do with the motions, go ahead. and
Make a motion that we accept the bid from Pro Technologies and Hooksett for the new security cameras for the safety complex on the police department side at a figure of $7,987.38.
Second, anyone?
You wanna add to that? Where the money's coming from?
Oh, and the money will be taken out of the
Bottom line.
bottom line police budget.
I'll second it.
Any questions or discussion?
No, I know in the minutes at the last meeting, he had said that the differential between the prices was because of the lower ones weren't adding, or that the highest two was a full replacement, and I don't believe that is the case, so I just wanted to make that clear. So, and I agree with this project knowledge.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Now, just a comment on the bottom line. A number of people in public comment and so forth have commented that we keep track of, the department head keep track of what line he or she's taking it out of, even though we know it's a bottom line budget. So I think that that information should be available, So if it's
So
asked.
find out what line did he
Yeah,
take
so
from.
if it's asked, we're not here without,
Yep.
mouths hanging open saying, do it. Say, yes, he took it out of such and such a portion of the budget because, et cetera. Just makes us all look like we know what we're talking about.
I do. It's sharp this week.
Proposals
too,
for
so-
assessing services.
Yeah, I just want, this is gonna be done as similar as we did for the auditing. Basically, we'll open the bids, but the packages, as you can see, are large. So there's gonna be a lot of information that you'll have to consume and digest, and I'll also share it with Wendy, you know what I mean, as to what. So just for your information, we received 3 bids. The first one is Avatar, which is our current. Second one is CCAG out of Bow, New Hampshire. And the third one is KRT Appraisal out of Haverhill, Mass. So, they're all supposed to be given a copy, which, go for it.
I'll move over a little bit.
Yeah, especially with your eyesight being impaired, you may get too close to the blade.
I think that's what happens.
Okay.
Don't be stingy, hand me one.
There's enough. Hopefully there's enough for everybody.
Are these,
They're all the same, yeah, you wanna keep the original.
Cover letter, I'll keep going with the cover letter. Thank you.
Here, pass one down, hang it around. All right, go ahead, thank you. You're killing me. I'll get that one.
Need one more now, and then we'll get them all covered.
I'll take
Okay,
it.
this is extra.
There's one more.
Playing cards now.
Go fish.
Extra.
John, get this one? All right, extra.
An envelope. There was no cover letter in that one.
I'll take the extras too.
There you go.
So there's some more reading when you, as the gentleman said, go to the at night.
Yeah. We've got insomnia.
What I'm gonna do is there's an extra copy here for Wendy, so I'll have Wendy go through it as well. And Beth can have my copy if you can look through it if you like. Just to make sure it matches what we wanted. It's just, it wasn't, it's gonna be open by, actually, I think there are a lot more people that we thought might have. I knew one of them, these two, I'd never heard of, so we'll see.
Advertise.
So my intention wasn't to
Award
do
it to
anything with them tonight, but open them and announce that the trees weren't big,
Okay.
which is what you've gotten two copies for more than read.
Oh, that's more like reading.
Might take you a little while to decide, but,
minutes, next on the agenda?
yes.
I only had one little question. I didn't make any changes in it, actually. The second page, first line, I didn't understand it. Vice Chairman Hipla stated that last week the state police were toned out. What does that mean?
Oh, called. It was called
Called
upon.
out, you know, when
Yeah.
the phone goes off and they're.
Yeah, beep, 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 yeah.
Oh, okay, so that's just an acronym for.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the fire world, my
Yeah.
mother used to tone everybody out. Cause she had the red phone.
The red phone, that's right.
Florence, we
Right.
lost it.
So, we can change that to called out if you'd like.
Yeah.
Call just to
Yep, for simplistic, yep.
us that aren't in the know with the language of the.
Okay.
I had a change on the 1, 2, 3, 4th line down. Second word, shouldn't it be DO instead of DUE?
I can't read it from here.
Okay, the
Has
biggest
to
issue
do,
has
yeah.
to do.
Yeah, that's right. We're not
Okay.
doing
Yeah.
this.
Which one is it?
Missed that one.
Where is it?
Just third
Instead of
line.
DUE, do, spell
The
check didn't
biggest
pick it up.
issue has to do.
DO.
To limitations, okay.
In the second line up in that same paragraph, was given on the bids. The response time for service was given on the bid. Asked if the response time.
Just add the word was in there.
Yes,
Oh,
yeah. What to do, my glasses.
I got a cramp. I don't know why the glasses are costing that.
Response time for service.
Oh my God, I didn't do anything to the glasses.
Some kind of a muzzle inhibitor. Anything else on that page, Jen?
Nope,
That you have?
no,
Anything else?
nope,
Well, you were
nothing
good.
on 3. Oh, well, I had one on 5. The first paragraph, DPW Director Nat sent a text stating they are working on it?
Texted and stated. I would say
Texted, and, yeah, you could say texted and stated, yes.
Yeah, that was when he sent you the
I'll
text.
go with that.
Yeah, he did bring it that night, yeah, he didn't
Yeah.
bring it for the
First
Texted,
page,
Top paragraph, last line.
texted and stated,
texted.
yeah.
Texted that they are working on it, eliminate and stated, just for text.
Good.
Yeah, good.
Anybody else have anything?
No.
Move to approve the minutes
Second.
of October 2nd as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
You bound it.
You better get this right, glasses or not.
You want me to read it, or?
You borrow my
I
reading.
tilt them just right, they work here. Of course, I gotta keep in mind that we're on YouTube.
You're gonna be left out here for a long time.
And now, from Saturday Night Live. Okay, I move to order the treasurer to sign payroll and accounts payable checks dated October 19th, 2017, as included in the following manifest. Payroll manifest, $55,568.62. Accounts payable for $247,627.42. There's also a supplemental accounts payable manifest for $3,592. And a Weare School District manifest for $450,000. So the total is $756,788.04. The following manifests were previously ordered to be signed at the October 2nd Board of Selectmen's meeting. That was a payroll manifest of $53,626.07 for checks dated 10/12/17, and accounts payable for $53,477.86, also for checks dated 10/12/17. Is there a second? No second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tom, I have a question.
Anything to do
Would
with
you
my
go?
glasses?
No, it doesn't. No, and you don't have to look at me for this. You can just listen.
I can see fine.
After the last meeting we had a 3-2 vote, or the meeting before that, we had 3-2 vote on the manifest. If that were to fail, how do we go about that? That was a question I had. I didn't know. I got thinking about that afterwards, because it's all ever since I've sat on the board, it's always passed. But I don't know if it just goes to discussion to that 1 or 2 items,
Yeah.
and those get removed,
You
or
can't you can't not pay your payroll.
well, that's exactly right, and that's kind of what I figured.
Or
But
anything that goes to the schools or
You can remove
anything
an
like that.
item if you had a discussion and wanted further clarification. You
okay,
Right.
You can amend the bottom to remove it.
okay, that's what I figured. But I just want to make sure. Okay, because I'm thinking to myself, if we actually did fail it down, then what?
You have to go back and just remove the item in
Right.
question.
Right,
And change the dollar amount.
exactly. So everybody else gets paid. Yep.
Before I get started down my list, I want to hand down I have a 2018 Forest Fire Warden reappointment form. This came from the state of New Hampshire, and Raymond Eaton has gone down through it as a Forest Fire Warden, and there's a couple that we're not going to renew, which you'll see that he wrote no. The rest of them are being renewed, and there is places for 3 board members. It's a whole list, it's not just one name, but it's a whole list of wardens that are able to issue permits.
No, I can see it.
I think like Sue's name was removed, and there's a
Yeah.
couple, yeah.
Yeah.
So how many,
Total?
total?
1, 2, 3, 4. 6, 7, 8, 9.
This is coming from,
Ray Eaton signed
He's
it,
the
and now it
chief.
has to be signed by, no, he's a forest
He-
fire
Yeah,
warden.
He's
the
forest
Then
warden.
it's
He's
still
the
gonna
warden.
go over to
Right.
Concord after us.
Yeah.
so these are all
Reappointment,
local
Basically,
appointments.
yeah.
You can sign for it.
Yeah.
yes.
Hey,
You-
I'm on here. His brother's on there too.
There'll be a big no.
Yeah, for you? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I get the law dogs down here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, geez. And we're adding some too.
Yeah, sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't finish that page.
Just one, by the looks of it.
We're only adding one.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
She's taking the desk.
Yeah.
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 There you go.
Do you need a motion or just signatures?
Well, there's enough spots on there, there's 3 spots on each,
Yep.
right? So you
Oh,
don't need more.
Yeah, just on the back page, I think.
There's
or something.
three spots,
Yep.
chair and 2 paragraphs.
Yep.
And then on this other sheet, I believe there's the same amount of
Yeah. 3.
Yeah. Yeah, 3.
chairperson and 2.
Yep.
So you can pass it down, you don't need a motion.
I'm not gonna sign it, so I'm not.
Yeah, that might be fine. I think.
Then I also am gonna hand down that way, this is familiar to anybody that's not, Jan and John might, be new to you, but we always issued a permit to trap to Glenn DuBois up in the Woods Family Forest. And every year he comes in, asking for permission, and it's the selectmen and the conservation, because the selectmen own it, but the conservation has the easement on it, so, not sure exactly where Tom would sign this, but, because Andy took the, I think you signed off to the corner or something, because it takes both of them.
Has conservation already approved?
Conservation's already approved the permit to trap, but it needs to be signed by the board as well. And that's at the, Woods Family Forest.
This is gonna need a motion, correct?
Yes, there's only one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a whole bunch of them back here.
Oh, there you go. Well, the one that goes to the state needs one signature.
Right.
though.
Right. I move to have the chair sign the permit to trap on the Woods Family Conservation Area. Have the chair sign the permit and the rest of the board sign the agreement
For Glenn DuBois.
for Glenn DuBois.
Aye.
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 I'm gonna bring up one more thing, and then I'll go down through my list. Chief Kelly asked me tonight to ask you, remember he was here a few weeks ago and talking about graphics, and we said we would wait to see where we were at the end of 3rd quarter. He would like to send the Unit 6
Mm-hmm.
over to have the graphics done, which cost, he said, between $900 and $1,000 to have the SUV look like the Dodge Chargers. Same graphic package, it would be a change. And when he was here in September, he asked, and we told him to wait. He asked if he could move forward at this point. It's less, he said it would be $1,000 less. Because the quote he was giving was September, it was $900. Is that,
We would just list it as a vehicle maintenance item.
yes,
Yeah, the only thing I have is,
You sign it?
yeah. Now that we've just put this money out for the
Cameras. Does he want to reevaluate
does he want
and let
to
us know?
evaluate that?
okay.
That's a big chunk of money.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
The only, I assume we're gonna keep that multiple years,
What's that?
Oh, yes.
the SUV.
Yes, I believe so.
You know, do we really
Another
want
couple
it
years
driving
anyway.
around?
Well, it's still.
It's still a
marked, I
recognized
believe.
mark unit. It's still
Yeah,
something
I know.
recognized.
So, I mean, to spend,
They would just like wait another month? So-
oh, yeah, wait and see.
Or next week. I mean, he can reevaluate where he's at.
Yeah.
You know.
Wait and see what is, you know.
Since we spent about 8,000 of this money.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
kinda
That's-
unexpected.
That money's coming out of his budget, I mean, it's
Right.
like,
Might well give him the option, yeah, before we
Right.
spend 1,000 of it.
So now I'll go down through.
see what happens to the third quarter, whatever, the third quarter left over after that.
Right.
It's like-
Ain't giving much, no.
So, town hall doors are done. The brass kick plates are in. They were installed on 10/9, so that job is complete. The installation, they're coming on 10/24. She didn't have anything this week at 8 o'clock. She can go up and look in the attic. The town hall, I know some of you had said you went over and looked at the town hall, at the handicap ramp, the back door, and the furnace room door. Dave finished that this past weekend. So that is done. Police locker renovations, I believe, is a bigger project that we'll have to talk about maybe during budget season. Thank you. And then the Gordon Brown buildings, I haven't heard anything, but I haven't actually followed up with Sherry either, so I could do that. The camera project, we just approved tonight. In the Clint Grove underpinning, I've not heard back from Sherry yet either, so I'll touch base with her on both the Gordon Brown building and the underpinning to see where we are. The noise ordinance, I did grab Goffstones, which I think Dick's talked about that a couple of times, about the fireworks and the noise.
Mhm.
So Goffstown has one that I'd be willing to share, but it is back in our court, and if we're going to do anything or not do anything, we need to, move off first.
Did you already email that to us, or did you give me one when I came in?
I think I printed one off and I said I found one, so I can email it all to you guys, or it's right on Goffstown's website, but I'll email it to you all.
I had a copy, I didn't know if I printed it out or if we given it to you when I came into the agenda.
No, I was, I think you happened to stop by when I had found it. Hawkers and peddlers, I wasn't sure what tonight's agenda was gonna bring, that's why I didn't put that one on, or the medical eligibility, and I figured the custodian is something that we should do, when we're going to do it as part of budget. Budget presentation, we were hoping that we could have the tax rate setting tonight, but it's not gonna happen, it's gonna be next Monday night, cause we got the green light partially, but it was this afternoon, so I don't have all your numbers yet. So we'll have that for next Monday, will be part right at the beginning. We do have a couple things already on the agenda for next week, but tax rate setting needs to go on there. So that'll be done. So with that being said, Beth and I put our heads together and we wanna keep you in the budget mode altogether, so we're gonna do the following 4 Monday nights in a row would be budgets. Would be the
Starting next week.
30th would be all of the small ones and the wages and benefits. Then the next Monday, I'd move you to DPW, the following Monday after that would be fire, and the last Monday before Thanksgiving would be police for the first round. So that's where we are. The joint loss, I did find I just need to find the balance. I found out who was on it, but it seems awfully heavy now on the employee side for what was on there. So I know it's on my list, so I won't forget to do it, but she emailed a lot of employees and very little department heads, so I just have to see what our balance needs to be, because I know it has to be equally mixed. So that's why I just said it's been evacuated, but I put it on here so I wouldn't forget to do that, because we do need to do it, there is fines. And someone will have to take over chair whether, we meet once, because you have to also go over the accident reports and make recommendations. So, with that being said,
Now, did Phil Sincere come to all those meetings?
he came to ones that he could make. I
Okay,
won't say that
so
he
you
was
know-
here for everyone, but he
Uh-huh.
did come.
Okay, because I did see.
And I would go back and get him back involved as well, because he was obviously part of the risk on the other side. So I would invite him as well, because he did attend when he could, because we always picked, each quarter we picked the next meeting.
Mhm.
So, So that ends my report. I do have one thing under correspondence, and I have a non-public at the end of the evening I'd like to go over.
I just have one question on the town hall door. The door that was on the left, were we gonna put something to make it closer? I thought that was what the decision was.
There was no decision, it was mentioned, there was no decision on
On the left, looking at it?
that. Looking at it from the
Looking at
left,
it,
there's a little bigger gap.
There's a
where-
gap on the left side.
Where,
Okay.
on the side with the handle, there's a wider space.
Okay,
Where it hits
The
in the
left
center
hand
monument.
door than there is on the right.
okay.
And I thought you had suggested putting a piece or something.
Yeah, we did talk about that.
But we
I don't-
didn't,
If it were possible.
Yeah,
we never brought it up other than that, it was a suggestion.
They are, well, they only already said the kick plates are on and
yeah, I saw the kid.
Yeah.
the bottoms are reinstalled. The weather stripping pieces on
Thresholds.
the bottoms
Oh,
of the
okay.
doors.
Yeah, 'cause on the 9th, he put on the one-piece door sweeps, the kick plates, and the closers were adjusted so the doors operate properly. That's what he said, that completes the scope of work.
Yep.
So, I mean, I know we talked about a few things, but I didn't ask to do anything. I mean,
Yeah, it was a,
That, on the other doors, the ones that Dave Huey installed, I guess some people already looked at them, did an excellent job on the installation
yeah,
on,
very good job.
Yeah, he did.
on both of them.
And retrofitting that other door to the back.
Yeah, I think that door that he retrofitted, at some point in time, might need a different handle,
Right,
because,
fire. Because it
Yeah.
can exit.
yet it doesn't, it isn't his fault, because I think he reused the handle that was there, but
Right.
it doesn't, the lock button is indented, sort of,
Mhm.
so it's hard to lock it and whatever. But at some point in time, I know how to do that, but it's not anything urgent. It certainly is a much better
Door then.
door than
Yeah.
it was there.
The other one wasn't much of a door.
No.
No.
And I think he did use the least warped, because I don't see any warpage in it back there.
Good. Good. And it's in the dark back there for the most part.
Yep.
In the shade.
Yeah.
mhm.
I think it was the handicap.
Yeah,
that
'cause he
would
said
be-
taking off the
that was
crash
what it
bar and the
was.
closer.
Yep.
And he had to paint it and do something different. He filled the holes where took the stuff off.
And the railing
Mhm.
looks so nice painted
Yes.
over there.
Yep. It's a lot better.
And the gray paint,
The
everything.
gray
looks
paint.
great. And the gutter thing.
and-
Yeah.
He tried that really well.
Good. Did a very good job.
Okay, public comment? Are you all set?
I am.
Frank Campana. I was a little bit relieved when I heard the discussion of the cameras, but I'm not quite sure, is there, I'd asked a question some time back, is there any obligation, tax obligation to keep these things running, to monitor them, to, I know you signed a contract, what is that contract, just to install them and it's a one-time deal?
I don't think there was any ongoing charge on that from that
No.
company.
No, from that bid, there was no
No
ongoing.
ongoing service charge.
The other one there was.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, I mean, who's gonna monitor these things, you know, is there gonna be
Recorded.
time involved from, you know, our police department amongst, you know, I heard Goffstown mentioned.
What they,
So-
what
There's
It-
gonna
they
be,
do is
it
they
almost sounds-
record. They
Pardon me?
just constantly record on a recorder. It's like
The
a
main-
DVR, but an NVR, and
Yeah.
then they can, and Goffstown at the dispatch, which is 24 hours, they can punch it up and watch the cameras from down there. There's no charge.
for the front
that.
lobby,
For
yeah.
the front lobby, or actually, they could probably access
They could probably
any of
see
it.
any of them,
And
but,
so could the officers from their phones in the car.
Okay.
yeah.
It's just like
It's a
going
liability.
on the internet and
Looking at the traffic
looking at
cameras.
a site and pulling it up, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, but to me, where there's personnel involved, I mean, personnel doesn't do it for nothing.
Well, it's doing as part of their ongoing duties,
Yeah.
or their work, or
I mean,
during their work hours.
yeah.
We're paying the fee for Goffstown for dispatch and everything else, and that's what part of that is. If they can access it to see if there's somebody in the lobby when the phone rings through, they can access that phone, or see actually who's standing in the lobby that's calling.
Yeah, well, I think I understand the mechanics of it, but
Right.
again, when people are involved to do something, there's usually a charge.
But we're
I think-
paying for that charge service, so it's already paid for whether they do it or they don't.
I think it's gonna be, I think in the long run, it's gonna be less because, you know, in the explanations we've gotten from the police chief, that it really, if they need to access anything now, they need to call the rep comes over, and then the technician may be too young to realize how to use the system, and then are you tying an officer up while they're waiting to access the information? I can't say that, I don't know specifically, but, I mean, to me, that would, you know, consequently stack up. With this, it's gonna be a couple pings of the keyboard, and they're in. So I actually think it's gonna be a reduction in the long run, but, you know,
Like getting their own at
Then,
home, I can do it
that's it,
online.
yep.
And I was also pleased to hear that, in regards to where the money's coming from, and to keep track, I think it was, I think, Tom, you said some questions of from the public, of where the money, you know, where money comes from. I appreciate you not mentioning my name, but that wouldn't make any difference to me. But,
No, you're not the only one, though. You know, we had a previous board member who was very, when he was on the board, was very much adamant about that.
and let me just extend that further. It's something that the board should be doing automatically anyway, for your own information, you know, and to know where money's coming from. And as Naomi had said, I spoke to her today anyway, you're gonna set the tax rate next week, and unfortunately, we don't have the first public comment anymore, so I have to do this week ahead of time, and maybe even after the meeting next week, I don't know. My concern is always, you know, money coming back to reduce taxes. I'll be very repetitious for me personally. I don't want you guys to be my banker. I want you to return what you can to reduce my taxes. And if you need to ask that money from me to support something, so be it. Give me the choice. That's what you do in your own households, you know, with companies you deal with. You get a rebate on something, they send you the money, and you can choose to use the rebate with that particular company, or put it in your pocket, or spend it somewhere else. And I think, you know, the same policy should be held by the Board of Selectmen. The other thing in regards to that is, unfortunately, the board hasn't had to say to anybody in the public that the town's portion of the tax rate increased last year, even though you reduced it, even though you applied some money to reduce the tax rate. Again, the town portion of the tax rate. And I look back at this year's town report, and I guess I lost the place. I pulled the paper out too soon. There was about $800,000 in unredeemed taxes for last year. It was pretty closer to 9. And I can't help but think that some of that is due to the fact of people can't afford the taxes. You know, the increase in taxes. Some of it is by their own design, that's absolutely for sure. You just have to listen to people that are carrying credit card debt. So I would encourage the board to, you know, return, you know, a sizable, an impact amount of dollars to reduce the town's portion of the tax rate. Last year, with last year's sheet, you retained about 6 2/3%. I didn't do my full homework, which I should have. I think that percentage has been going up over the last several years. It's still, whether it's 5%, it's still 5% of whatever dollar amount it's figured on, so you should be able to, you know, stay solvent, I would think. So, you know, don't put me as a taxpayer in a position of being a victim of the trickle-down effect. Say, well, you know, Campan is gonna be happy with, you know, 2 or 3 cent tax rebate, or case of last year, well, no, I can't say last year because you were an increase. So, you know, make it a sizable impact. You may gain some trust in the voters, I don't know. But the other thing that I'll be looking for is to see what you do with budget surplus. You did a considerable amount last year, it was about $340,000. And that included transferring money from the highway department to the bridge fund. So you took about $65,000 out of, again, towards the end of the year, out of the highway department and put towards the bridge fund, I believe.
No, we spent $60,000 to fix the bridge.
To fix River Road.
It wasn't for the bridge fund.
Well, I don't know if it went to fix the bridge or if it just went into
Went to
the...
the
Yeah,
Went to the
it came out of,
Okay.
it came out of the highway
The highway
budget during the year
Right.
to make the repair on the River Road Bridge. We didn't take anything out of the undesignated fund balance.
No, I understand that. I was talking strictly about budget. I said, it'd be interesting to see what you do with budget surplus this year. I first was talking about undesignated fund and then budget surplus. So, unfortunately, you don't have a lot of people here that seem to have the same concerns that I do, but, you know, maybe someday they will, but it'll be too late. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Correspondence?
No.
Anyone?
I just have one thing that came in late today. CWS Fence and Guardrail sent me an email to let me know that they're replacing the standard cable and beam guardrail along 114 from Flanders Memorial South 0.27 to the bridge over Breeds Brook. And it's gonna be October 23rd to the 31st, so if you see people, they wanted us to know.
Pick up the old ones.
That's right in the center, isn't it?
Right that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that one,
Yeah, but it's right in the center, right?
all
Yeah.
those old cable.
Oh, yeah. They've been there for too
That's
long.
all I had, just to,
Okay. Anything else?
I have non-public though.
Yeah, I have one thing on the other business. Last week, we signed off on that, yeah, 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, on that purchase and sales agreement toward a possible purchase of a backhoe. And, yeah, I may be wrong on this, Jan, but I had somebody from the CIP committee call me and with a concern that, I know that you voted no on that. There was a 4-to-1 vote. So the concern was that you approached the finance committee members who were at the CIP meeting, I guess with your concerns about the board signing that. Now, I may be all wet on that, but if,
The finance committee that took it?
Yeah.
Okay. We were discussing it, but not in that aspect. Now, my feeling is that it's the intent. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like it's the intent to purchase it, if it passes. So the intent is
Right.
there. So that's why I didn't know if the no means no would come into play. It was a question I had, if not more so, and another gentleman approached me about this too.
yeah,
And that was my reason for talking about it.
okay. It wasn't
It was
second
my
guessing
intent.
our vote.
No,
Okay.
no, you have a right to vote the way
No,
you want
no,
to.
I just, what I'm
No.
concerned about is that,
No,
you know, last year, I spent 6 years on the school board. This is my 12th year
mhm,
here as a selectman. And last year, what happened at town meeting is the first time I've ever seen anything like that
Mm.
happen. And I really want us to be able to work together and share our different opinions at this table.
yeah,
And then walk away as a united front afterwards. I think that's very
And I'm
important
for that, and I
the
was
town.
not for the situation that happened last year either, so.
Okay.
But that was what I was meaning, was could the intent be taken that way? That
No, it's a
you're gonna
lease.
purchase.
It's not a lease, it's a lease with,
You-
if it's approved, then we can purchase it, but to
the
hold
intent
that
is there to
piece of it.
purchase it.
No, there's no intent until you get it approved. All it is a lease, it's any lease agreement, but a municipal lease in those categories. They say, okay, you're interested in this, this is the deal we offer, you wanna have a long-term lease, if you decide to buy it, if you get the approval to buy it, sign this agreement, it's binding, so if you do, it's binding that we will not take that piece of equipment during the lease period and sell it.
To my knowledge, any municipal lease that we have ever done has never been signed prior to.
This one is a lease for the ongoing use
was
of that
Not a lease,
machine.
it's a
Yeah,
purchase
purchase
It was
order.
only a purchase
Yeah.
order.
It's a
Yeah,
purchase
it's
order, so that's
well,
why I don't want.
it's in cooperation with the
But
lease.
it's a
That
purchase order.
misunderstanding, that's why I don't
But
want
it's,
that.
and if whatever we spend on it, 80% of it comes back
Right.
towards the purchase, so.
I
All it does
thought-
is hold that there if it gets approved at the town deliberative session.
It's just a hold order, that's all it
The
is.
no means no thing wouldn't come in because we certainly have no intention of buying it if the voters say no.
Yeah, right.
Right.
They've said, no, we're not buying it now, we're leasing it to be used,
Mhm.
which you can lease any piece. Basically, it's a more of an extended type lease, but that's what you're leasing, you're
Mhm.
leasing that thing, and that's what it is. If we decide to buy it, then we've got a binding. So they can't sell that piece of equipment off.
Are you
onto us.
leasing it or are you renting it?
We're renting it
Ah,
right
right.
now.
You're renting
We're
it.
renting.
Renting, lease, it's the same.
But there's still,
No,
an-
it
there's still,
isn't.
there's still an
If you
agreement,
do a
though.
lease,
It's an
You
agreement.
need to go to town meeting before you can do a lease.
Well, it's rental anyway.
Rental.
It's a rental
I
contract.
mean, it's a rental contract, so I mean, you wanna split hairs, but that's,
Okay, anything else, any other business?
Yeah, I got one thing. I was reading in the Messenger the other day that Jean St. Jean Auctioneer Company met with town of Antrim about auctioning off town properties. What do we coming along on anything on doing that?
Well, you also know you have to wait 3 years, right?
I understand that.
Yeah. No, I
we've
mean,
got over $1 million worth of town-owned tax deeded properties in
some of it
town.
we've had quite a while.
That's been over 3 years.
There's gotta be a bunch of them in
Right.
there that are over 3 years.
Right. And even if he comes and does 5, that's five less off the liability.
But what I'm just saying is that they met with the selectmen of Antrim explaining what they would do instead of a bid form. So perhaps we should have them
Come here to meet
meet
with
with
us.
us.
They're
and see
about,
what they
they're
can do.
about the only game in town. If you look in the paper every Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
They do
there's a couple, but
Sullivan and there's like
There's
three
three of them
that
that
do, there's one
St.
out
Jean
of
is
Saperstein out of
yeah,
Massachusetts.
St.
or
Jean's
something.
pretty active
they all
though.
do it a different way.
Well,
Yeah.
St. Jean does the land share of it.
I
Yeah.
just
He also
don't
does,
put that on the back burner too fast.
yeah,
No, we wanted to follow up with the town attorney on,
as far as,
I thought that's what was said before.
No,
not about this.
not about,
No,
No.
tax deeding?
no.
No, this is deeded,
Tax deeded property.
This is
already deeded, not in
Right.
process.
Sale.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to put it back out for sale.
Put it out
Right.
for auction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
So
Okay.
there is a statute that you have to, the 3-year statute.
right, I understand that, but there's also people living in the properties that we have to go through.
Which is a
You have to
liability.
go through eviction.
I
We have to
understand,
do-
but I thought,
No, I know there's a process. There's a,
Yeah.
We
I
have
get
to,
it.
we have to get the town attorney to do that because the eviction
Exactly.
process
That's, she
is,
has to do the eviction paper.
Right.
she has to do the eviction papers and a certain, if they've got children at certain
November
times of year.
November
you can-
1st is 2 weeks away, and if there's kids involved, they
Kids.
stay until April.
Yeah.
Nothing you can do about it.
But I think we ought to be on our game in April.
Yes,
Mm.
definitely.
And
Yeah.
if the ones that aren't or don't
And be-
have
and be
kids,
ready.
then we might as well do it now. Because we're
Yeah,
we're liable. If they slip and
Fall,
break their leg up there, we're gonna.
we're it. Yep, so,
right.
keep it moving forward, not
not,
roadblocking it.
And it'll puts, well, we'll gain some money back, but anything above and beyond,
Goes
that's
back
all,
to them.
goes back to
Doesn't go
them.
back to us.
No. but at least it's
Well, the tax money
The tax
does.
money.
the
There's a-
tax money and interest
there's a-
and fees, but if you sell it for, they only owe us 30,000 and plus
You sell it for
whatever, and you sell it for 150, they're gonna get back 100 grand
But there
anyway.
is a
And that's fine, it's
penalty
all,
too.
it's all,
But it's
off
off
our
our
backs,
rolls.
and that's
Yeah.
fine.
It's off our back.
Right, it's off our back, off our card, and we get our,
And if the thing, if they don't do
Expenditures.
something and they start falling in, we're gonna get nothing for it.
right, right. Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Mhm.
A and C,
We'll just see.
Yeah.
okay, move to go into non-public under RSA 91A 3(2) A and
Do
C.
you have anything to
Second.
add?
Oh, no, I just need energy to get up.
Aye.